Well, fifth grade honors, Mr. B here. I hope you're all doing well and doing the best you can under the circumstances we're in. I know Mrs. Rush and Mrs. Kinsella were teaching you all about the Revolutionary War when all of a sudden our school year was interrupted. So I just wanted to take this chance to say hello and read you a quick story called George Washington's Teeth. All of his life, George Washington had problems with his teeth, and he worked hard to save them. The story you're about to hear is really what happened to George Washington and his teeth. The Revolutionary War, George hoped would soon be won, but another battle with his teeth had only just begun. George Washington rushed into town. The dentist heard his shout. "Hold still," he said, then gave a yank, and a rotten tooth popped out. All that night George tossed and moaned. Another tooth was sore. But at the dawn he saddled up and galloped off to war. George reached New York as British ships invaded every port. Preparing for a fierce attack, his soldiers built a fort. Inside he rubbed his swollen gums with soothing oil of myrrh, until a sentinel cried out, "Here come the British, sir!" Charging on the field, George thought, "There's something in my mouth." He spat into his handkerchief. Another tooth came out. "This can't be happening," George gasped. "What if someone should see? If word got out I'm losing my teeth, my men would laugh at me." While no one looked, he wrote a note his dentist would soon receive. "Please come," it said. "I'll need your help when I get home on leave." Back at home, George lost more teeth, till he had only 10. "Oh, Martha, dear," George cried, "I fear I'll never eat again." She fed him mush and pickled tripe, but when guests came to dine, he sneaked one of his favorite nuts. But then he only had 9. George crossed the icy Delaware with 9 teeth in his mouth. In that cold and pitchy dark, 2 more teeth came out. Snow fell on George at Valley Forge. His blue coat hung in tatters, but then he'd only 7 teeth that couldn't even chatter. Yet bravely George led forth his men, coat and pigtail flying. While cannons boomed, he held his jaw and groaned, "I think I'm dying." The redcoats fled, George won the war, and when he returned alive, Martha checked for 7 teeth, but only counted 5. He hid the evening of her ball, ashamed his friends would see. That night the dentist came again. George lost another 3. Poor George had 2 teeth in his mouth. The day the votes came in, the people had a president, but one afraid to grin. A portrait artist came to George. He said, "I know a trick. I'll pad your mouth with cotton balls to puff your sunken lips." George stood up to have a look. He fell back on his fanny. "It doesn't look like me," he roared. "It looks like Martha's granny." He yanked the cotton from his mouth and gasped, "What have I done?" The cotton held a rotten tooth. Now George only had 1. George still had that tooth tonight. A knock came at the door. "I've bought false teeth," the dentist called. "Teeth that won't get sore." George put them in, but when he smiled, springs snapped against his tongue. Out flew those teeth. "Ah!" George shrieked. "They knocked out my last one!" "Oh no," George moaned. "I'm toothless." He kept his mouth shut tight. He couldn't sleep. He paced the floor and prayed with all his might. "If only I had teeth," thought George. He pondered what to do. "Aha!" he cried. All my old teeth might help make something new. He searched Mount Vernon's bedchambers, the pantry parlors and halls, through shelves and desk drawers and the musty floor of every horse's stall. George found no teeth. Alas, they're gone. A great sob shook his shoulders. Through tears he peered in one last chest, leaped up and yelled, "My molars!" With plaster in those teeth he found, George poured a sample mold that showed the dentist how to make false teeth that George hoped would hold. The dentist took strong hippo tusk and carved a set to size, each tooth secured with screws of gold that lit up George's eyes. Can you guess the story's end? Those new teeth fit just right, and round the ballroom with his friends, George danced all through the night. Well, boys and girls, that's the story of George Washinton's teeth. And since it seems like we all got a lot of time on our hands, make sure you're brushing your teeth 3 times a day for at least 2 minutes. Can't wait to see you all again.